I'm just gonna redo again. Are we ready?
Yep.
I was born ready.
All right. Welcome to the Apex Strength Cast with your hosts Tyler Seabrook and Anthony Krasner. This Strength Cast is brought to you by Apex Strength training for everyone. Today we have Josh Pataka. We're going to be going over his lifts and what we like to call the junior mentality.
So, Josh, tell us about yourself, your lifting experience, how long you've been lifting for.
So my name's Josh. I've been lifting since I was 13. So what's that? 8 years now?
3 years.
Yeah, I'm 15. 16. Oh god, I can't do maths. Yeah, I've been lifting for 5 years in powerlifting, but 8 years in total. Started when I was 16, 17. Started doing some powerlifting style training and started competing back in year 12, which was 2014.
Young.
Yeah. But I got some national records back then, so that's really what got me hooked. My
The sub-junior records really count.
the sub junior records.
At the
Hey.
time, they do.
No, it was I don't know, it was good. My friend Kelvin from Fitness 405, the gym I was training at in Northcote. He I just saw him as this old like silverback character at the gym, and I was like, he seems cool. I'll go ask him for some advice, and sort of gave me the bugger off type vibe. But he eventually sort of like warmed up to me and some of the other younger blokes there who were sort of keen on getting strong, because he was doing like 220, 230 for like sets of 5 to 8 or something on deadlifts.
Yeah, it's a strong guy.
Strong guy, yeah.
Really strong guy.
What do you weigh?
He was a 120 lifter, and he was about 52, 53 at the time. And
Jesus.
he'd just gotten into the sport, yeah.
Never too late.
Yeah.
That's something people don't realize is like I'm too old, I'm like 40, and you're like, dude, that's fine to start at that age. You can start at 50, you can start at 60. It's one of the best parts of the sport, is there's no limits on when you can start or how far you can go, right? So you can start at 40 and still be the strongest version of yourself. Like, yeah, look, if you start at 20, there's all potential that you're going to be stronger,
Yeah.
but there's no reason if you start at 40 or 50 that you can't be the strongest version of you.
Yeah, well, it's like we have a few clients like that, where they're the strongest they've ever been, and they're in 40s,
And 50s.
50s, yeah.
Yeah, we've got one guy that, he's trained his whole life. Like, he does like martial arts and everything, and he's 56 or 57. And since working with us for about a year and a half, he went from deadlifting like 140 to 185 easy, and now he's doing easy 4s and 5s on 160.
Yeah, his form's looking so good.
Yeah, like he's stronger than he's ever been. He's 57.
Shout out to the bull.
The bull.
But Josh, so what was your original inspiration? What got you into the gym?
I've always admired strength. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to see my dad sort of picking up heavy shit around the yard, because he built boats until a few years ago, and I used to see him like dragging around like the trailers and whatnot. And when I was in prep, I thought, oh man, like he could lift a house. I want to be like that. So like that's sort of like where it all kicked off. I just wanted to be able to lift heavy things.
Yeah, want to be strong like your dad.
Yeah. But then I realised he couldn't lift a house. It's not very realistic.
So, what we're here for is the so-called junior mentality. And what that is you get young people in the sport, they come in guns blazing, they come up to you, hey, I've trained for 6 months, I'm squatting 180 or 160, which is really good. I want to squat 300 by the time I'm 23, in 3 years. And I don't care what it takes to get there. While having a lot of drive and motivation is really good, I think when you're young, you don't realize how long-lived of a sport this is, and that to actually be the strongest version of you and get to your potential, you don't do it in 2 or 3 years. That's a highway to injury. And what you see these kind of people, because they have no one to guide them. Like I did this a lot until I met Janice Carnier. He really changed my mind. I think it's the same for you, Josh. Janice changed your outlook on it. We both had injuries from going too hard, too fast, and that's not to say not training hard, but what it is it's training silly.
Smart. Yeah.
That's it. And you need to train smart,
Just
not
stupid,
go in there and PB 5 weeks in a row.
stupid attempts and
Yeah, exactly. Like, if someone does a 220 squat and then they, up it to 240 because it moved half decent, like, that's not realistic.
No.
But there's something you see with a lot of younger lifters, and not all, like, we're not putting a blanket on everyone, but, you don't really see it in lifters that have been around for a while. You know?
And yeah, it's very true. And like with your experience, Josh, tell us from, when you started lifting to now, after your experiences in terms of injury, and what you've seen, like what's changed.
Let us know
Yeah,
what
few.
helped change your mind on that, and what helped you see that there is a better way to progress and see the longevity you need in this sport, not to kill yourself by 23. Like, what were the big driving factors?
I think I was pretty lucky because I didn't get too beat up from training like a idiot when I first got into the gym. But I think what it comes down to is, particularly with junior lifters, you need to make a few mistakes to sort of learn properly. So I think first one I made was I got like a lot of problems with like my knees and hips. I still do, but like I'm able to train smart, so they're not an issue anymore. But I was just sort of like bottoming out squats when I first started training because someone told me you have to go ass to grass sort of thing. I didn't think like, I'll just go to parallel because like to competition depth, because that's all I need to do. I was thinking, you need to go down as far as possible to make it convincing
And get that rebound.
Yeah, get that that tight rebound or whatever. But it's I think the things that have like taught me the most have just been when I've actually like hurt myself, or I've been close to it, and then it's sort of a wake up call and you go, right, what can I change in my training sort of thing. And if there's stuff that's reoccurring, it teaches you, well, maybe I'm not like changing things enough, or maybe I'm not addressing the right issues sort of thing in my training. So I think the biggest sort of learning curves always, like particularly for people who are starting to lift, is always injuries, whether it's just niggles and stuff like that. They tend to teach people the best, just making mistakes and stuff.
Well, you look at like all of us. So for Anthony, it definitely would have been trying to get that rebound on 316, 2016 Worlds.
Yeah.
Yours
It was
was
320. Thank
Three-
you.
it was
Don't
320?
take that 4 kilos from me.
Yeah.
I hurt myself for that 4 kilos.
I was certainly like, I thought I was invincible until I tore my groin. I thought I was going to squat 230, 240 in no time. Little did I know that it's a long road to hit those numbers.
Lots of peaks and valleys.
Lots of and a lot of learning curves. And then
I
for
thought you said
yourself,
pizza for a second.
As people that don't know, Josh is a super
is a
heavyweight.
super heavyweight.
You have some
He's a
pizza right now.
142 kilo man.
What-
He's a big boy.
What was the biggest injury you've had, Josh?
The worst one I've had, I almost needed surgery for, was I got like a pretty bad grade 2 pec tear in my pec major in the lower strands. So I did that while I was benching, and it was just because the programming that I was doing was like really, really high intensity, which is normally all right for super heavyweights. Like I was training with Tony Rainmuth at the time, and me and him, our numbers were shooting up like crazy with on our bench press with this program, but obviously I wasn't really controlling it enough, and I was sort of relying on the rebound with the bench press. I didn't really do any pauses in my training.
And the bar path can go anywhere when you're doing that right, which is why you
Yeah.
call it shoots back, shoots forward.
Yeah, and I've got long arms too, so it stretches that muscle even more.
Make the shoulders susceptible to injury as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. The difference between me and like a lot of other supers is, like I have to swipe my passport halfway through my rep because I'm crossing the border. But I think I got size G arms, but yeah, it's I think that was one of the main contributing factors. I wasn't really taking into account like basic stuff like biomechanics when doing lifts, because obviously that led to the constant like overstretching the muscle, led to getting this really, really bad grade 2 tear. It only took me 6 weeks to come back from it, but I did have to drop out of Worlds that year, which was going to be sort of my debut at Worlds. And I haven't, especially with like all the politics that's been going on with the IPF and Powerlifting Australia, I haven't had the opportunity again to do that, because in previous years I hadn't had enough money, or I just didn't have the time. I was bad timing for me, sort of thing. And then that year everything was on point, but then I wasn't training smart. So
When did you realize that the way you were training wasn't good for longevity, or wasn't the right way to train?
I'd had about, I think, 8 facet joint sprains in my lower back. I torn my pec, torn my lat. I didn't tell coach about my lat. I just sort of kept on training through that. Have a glass of concrete, harden up, walk it off, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think after sort of a year and a half of doing that to myself, I was kind of like, how's everyone else like just getting by without getting hurt? I thought
Well, they weren't.
Yeah, well, they weren't training the same way. They were doing other stuff, for injury prevention and whatnot that I wasn't doing. So
Just smarter TAMs, looking after the body.
yeah.
Yeah, and you've learnt that now, and the importance of this particular podcast is to, I guess, let every other junior out there know that this mentality of just, ass to grass and just balls to the wall kind of training is what gets people injured and actually puts them off the sport.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is the thing. So what you see a lot is, they train like that. And look, when you're training really intense, and not to say intensity is in you're not going in there and trying hard, but like really high percentages all the time, and you don't care if your form falls apart. You just kind of muscle through all the list, which is what I did for ages. At that age, you think you're invincible.
Yeah.
But then what you see is a lot of the time they'll get injuries, and then they'll try to keep working around them, right? So say
then
they
they'll get
injure
hurt
their knee,
somewhere
they
else.
keep squatting, and then these injuries compile, and they end up retiring from the sport at like 22, 23. They've only been training for 3-4 years. When realistically in powerlifting, you need to be training 10, 12 years
maybe
or
maybe
more.
even 20.
To reach your full potential. So
Yeah.
a lot of like really amazing lifters drop out early because of this mentality, and it's like I never once thought about dropping out after I tore my quad, but I could see why people would, like if I had got another injury after that. But I was really lucky, and something I want to talk about, and someone I want to talk about, is I think we were both going through the same thing, Josh, and yours was with your pec, and you said you sprained your facet joint repeatedly. I tore my quad, and that's when I turned around and went, this isn't realistic. So I started doing my own training for a while, and that worked really well. But then I found it hard to keep myself accountable in the way that, like, I PB'd my bench 5 weeks in a row and then complained about pec tightness. So I went, I went 190, 195 kilo, 200, 202, 205.
Well, you can't max your squat out every day, so what else are you going to max out?
Well, my quad was torn, so I think I went from like a 175 to 205 bench in like 2 months.
Yeah.
Which was amazing progress, but it wasn't sustainable. And then I started talking to Janis Karnia and
Janusz.
Man, why do I always do that? I'm so bad at this.
Because his nickname is Janus Weightlifter.
Yeah. So
I love you, Janus.
I talked to him.
I'm just going to call him JC.
Yeah, I talked to JC,
'Cause JC
the Jesus
says-
of powerlifting.
Yes.
And he was just like, yeah, look, and he's the first one brought to me this junior mentality. He's like, I've seen your training. He's like, you're strong as hell, but if you keep going this way, you're not going to be around in 2 years. So
Credit to him. Man.
credit to him, and he really shaped the mentality on the way I coach now.
Yeah.
And even back then. So he started doing my programming and really just, teaching me that, yeah, you can train hard, but, hard with perfect form. Like, so, a 2 rep in reserve set isn't just when there's 2 reps left. It's when there's 2 good reps left, right? There's no use like good morning every squat.
Yeah.
You putting,
Because that's when you get a facet joint sprain.
yeah, exactly.
8 times in 18 months.
And he did the same thing for you.
Yes.
You approached him, and he helped you a
hell
lot.
Yeah, he did.
So now, even though you've had injuries from prior training, you're in such better shape.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not taking weeks off at a time because of injuries. You look better, you're stronger, you're a much more well put together lifter because of this new approach. And it's not that you don't train hard; it's that you
Yeah.
train smart. They're 2 different things. Like I know, I train 5 days a week. Every session, I'm killing myself in the gym. I'm training my ass off. But
you do it smart.
exactly,
Yeah.
I'm not doing 90% for trying to get triples on 90% every week. You know what I mean? Whereas if you look at last year, yeah, I got strong off my own programming, but like I was a mess.
Yeah.
Like even this is early last year.
Yeah.
I was just a mess because I think I was squatting my squat max was 335, and I was doing like 310, 315 every single week for doubles and triples.
Yeah. How long could you have done that for?
Well, probably not much longer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's something we really preach to our lifters is, don't look at 1 year in the future. Don't look at 6 months. I mean, it's good to have intermittent goals, but make the plan for when you're 30, when you're 35. And I think that comes from also getting a good coach that stresses that, right?
Yeah.
That intermittent goals are good, but look at the big picture.
That's
if
my
you add
favourite thing about JC. He just like you'll talk like some of his lifters will get junior records or whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's oh, coach, are you proud of me?" Da da da. And he goes, "It's just a junior record. Who cares?"
Yeah, and like I haven't been, but both of you've been in a situation where you've both got junior records, and imagine if you were just about to get a junior record, you were so close to it. Of course, you would train hard and maybe really push your body to a limit where you shouldn't. But it's just about expressing the fact that all three of us have been through injury, and have experienced the fact that if you try to do that, you will get hurt, and it will potentially destroy powerlifting for you, or set you back.
Yeah.
So
I remember JC telling me, because he wasn't convincing me at the start. I was like, no, I gotta train insane, like, gotta bleed. Like, if I don't get a nosebleed once a week, I'm not training hard. And, if I'm not passing out every few weeks from squats, from 10s on like 80% or high 70%, so I'm not training hard, And
I need to do another 12 sets, coach.
and I couldn't imagine not doing a 5 or 10 kilo PB on a lift, right? And I'm like, every competition needs to be 5 or 10 on each lift. I was used to getting 30 kilo total PBs, 40 kilo total PBs. He's like, dude, you're totaling in the 800s. That's not realistic anymore. And I was like, yeah, but I just got to train harder. And he really sat me down and was like, you can't do this for much longer, which I've said repeatedly. But the way he explained it to me, because I have a thick head, he was just like, if you put 2.5 kilos on every lift, every competition by training smart, you do 3 competitions a year, because at the moment you can only do 1 because you snapped up all the other times. He's like, that's 22.5 kilos on your total every year. Now imagine what that does in 10 years. And well, yes, in 10 years I'm not going to put 220 kilos on my total. It stalls, but he made a good point. I could put 50 kilos on my total now, injure myself, pull out of the sport, or always miss competitions and lifts, or nice and steady, chip away, and in 5 years, you've put 100 kilos on your total, or 80 kilos even. Like, that's amazing. You get to the same result in the end, but or you potentially get the same result, except you've got less chance of doing that by training like an idiot.
Yeah, I remember the first training cycle you did with JC, and you went for that 335 squat, I believe it was, and there was more in it.
Yeah,
but
that was crazy.
It looked
fast.
good, and at the time I was like, I'm like, JC definitely knows more than me. But I also was like, there's definitely more in that squat. But it's that the squat looked good, and reducing the risk of injury was what was so significant about that day. And like now looking back, I'm like, that is exactly the right decision that he made.
Well, if you look at Worlds this year, I went 322. I had 330 there, and I'm in a lighter weight class now, but I had 330 there. It wasn't a smart decision though. It would have been ugly. I would have ended up turning it into a good morning squat.
You would have no chance of pulling 350 because it would have just tanked you. Yeah.
And and that's something all comes back to JC, is why everyone calls him JC. He looks a bit like Jesus, but
he looks like Polish Jesus.
Yeah, but is that smart mentality? It's something that's stuck with me now, and something I really push, and Tyler really pushes into our lifters. And I sure now that you're coaching, you do to yours as well.
Yeah, it's always about lifting with like the best form possible. The main cue that I give to my lifters over in Hawthorn is always control, because I find like if someone had told me that, back when I was training at MU, I would have still been able to. I probably still would have been able to keep up with the training, but wouldn't have gotten as banged up because if you're focusing on controlling the weight, you're not letting it push you around, sort of thing. That's I feel like that's when lifters sort of lose control and sort of just go crazy with the speed on a lift, especially like a squat or a bench. That's when they that's when they get snapped up.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not good for your tendons.
I'm just curious, do you have a lifting story?
A lifting story?
Yeah.
What kind of lifting story?
Anything funny, crazy?
Funny, crazy.
Can I tell a lifting story after this?
You sure
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, you go first. Let Josh.
It's
think
not
of
about
it.
me,
I'll
though.
think.
Is that all right?
As long as it's not about me.
Then I don't
Is
have
it about
to.
me?
No, I'm not going to name names. But you always hear
It's
about
about me.
people shitting themselves in the
with
gym.
the initials Tyler Seabrook.
No.
No.
Thankfully, that has not happened to me.
Can I tell that kind of story?
Of course.
I was training at a gym. Someone was doing crazy heavy fives on deadlifts. And at the top of the first rep, they went, "Oh, I shit myself." Then they finished the set. They finished another 4 reps. And I thought they were joking until I saw them like waddle off and not come back for like half an hour.
Just trying to clean it out.
So there, I've opened up with my shit story. Pun intended.
God.
Sorry for that. Josh, you tell us a good story because that was terrible. I regret saying that.
What a man, though. Finish his set.
I know, like
Let's
one.
take lifting
Oh, I
story.
thought he was joking because he just kept
If
going.
we're going to take anything from that story, it's that.
Train insane.
Well, speaking of training insane, I remember I can't remember the lifter's name.
Don't name names
Well, yeah.
if it's a
like,
bad story.
Oh no, like it was pretty impressive. Like I think he'd be like happy to have his name if I knew it, but I don't. It was an Irish lifter that rocked up to the 2015 Commonwealth Games, Commonwealth Championships.
I was like, oh man,
Ooh,
Val's things are good.
wow.
Something I didn't know.
Yeah, no, there was this Irish lifter. I think he must have been in like the 74s or the 66s. He was crazy strong. He was a Masters 1 lifter, but he was like giving all the open lifters a run for their money.
It's always good when you see that.
Yeah.
It's like Tony Harris.
Yeah, he's crazy strong. But I was backstage, sort of getting like warmed up for my deadlifts, and they had 2 stages going at the same time. I think this is when the IPF had sort of started doing that with their international comps, and they had lots of people going at once. They'd have 2 going at once, and then I remember on his last deadlift warm up, I saw him do a single. He sort of looked like I don't know whether it was air or something, but like his cheeks puffed up when he got to the top, and I was like, wow, that looked like really weird, but it was also a really easy lift. That's impressive. Anyway, I go out and I do my opener, and then I'm sort of watching the camera. You know how they have the stream going backstage, so you can see what's going on stage. I was watching the other platform. He went out for his opening attempt, which I think he was opening on a world record. He was beating the world record by like
We
10
call that the
kilos
Trent
or
Ross
something
method.
crazy. Shout out to my boy Trent Ross. How's that Alico rack going? I packed that for him, by the way. That's anyway. So this guy, he like goes out and he just chunders everywhere. 10 kilo,
Call
like
that the man job.
man drop method, yeah.
Yes.
Shout out to my boy MJ. Or posterior 2 chains, as we call him.
yes. I was going to say that.
Yeah. So I think that was like the first time I'd seen anyone like vomit during a lift, finish it, and I think the next 2 lifts he went out like a little bit came out as well. It was like the most intense thing I've ever seen from a lifter.
But
I
I
think,
lifts?
huh?
He got the lifts.
He got all 3 lifts,
Good
9
on
for
him.
9, total deadlift and bench press world records.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I think they were Masters records for the deadlift, and I think he got an open record for the bench. But he's crazy strong, dude. I found it ridiculous though, because like at that point in time, I thought, if you were like gonna vomit or something, just stop, because that's a bit stupid. But then, it's tapping back into that junior mentality, which is I think where I got the idea of like just train balls to the walls all the time sort of thing. You don't need to do much like rest and recovery stuff. It's more about like lifting heavy and fast sort of thing.
Lift 5 hours a day, sleep 4.
Yeah, I know that.
Screw that, man.
Josh,
Yeah.
any advice for newer lifters, younger lifters, people up and coming? What's your biggest piece of advice, or pieces? We'll give you a couple.
Get a coach.
A good coach.
That's a good one.
Well,
yeah.
get a coach that has a good lifting record and a good record with lifters who haven't been injured very much. Because obviously you can't always avoid it, but the less that their lifters get injured, the better. And look at like their lifters' results and whatnot, because that will reflect on their programming style, their recovery methods and stuff that they sort of preach to their athletes. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
That's an interesting point you actually bring up, because there is like renowned coaches out there that you think, oh, they've had good lifts in the past, they've had good lifters, but then look at how many lifters have been hurt from their training. So it's like you actually have to pick and choose. Don't just go with whoever has the best or biggest records. It's about longevity and also results.
Yeah, I think some coaches would have the sort of the reputation for having like really strong lifters, but they get strong real fast. So I think it's important to take into account, how long, did it take that person to reach that point, and how long do the other lifters take, to reach that point, sort of thing, because that really tells you how hard they push their athletes and whether they're smart about their coaching.
Yeah, I mean, some coaches can get athletes who are already quite high performing as well. So you got to take that into account. Where you got coaches who take someone from, say, a 400 total to a 700 total. That to me is like more impressive, because they've taken that through that journey without getting injured.
I think you got to be careful not to base it just on how, like Josh said, don't base it just on how much their lifters lift, though, because if you pick and choose as a coach, you can just coach only genetic freaks, right? That'll get strong doing anything. But based on, one, how their lifters, I just blanked, how their lifters like talk about them, what they think about them, also their injury rates. Like if you're going to a coach and every second lifter's dropping out of comps for injuries, that's probably not the place you want to train. They might be able to get you strong, but 50% isn't good odds.
Yeah, that's true.
And look at the people that take just your average Joe to their best abilities. Just because they don't coach nothing but world champions or champions doesn't mean that they can't get people strong. If you can get someone that just trains 2-3 times a week to a good level of strength, and, a good level of athleticism, then they're definitely a good coach as well. Don't just base it on what their lifters lift. I think that's very important as well.
That's one reason I really appreciate like JC's type approach to it, because you look at a lot of the lifters that he coaches. Some of them are squatting 40 kilos, some of them are squatting 300 or something like that.
I wonder who squats 300.
Oh, not me at the moment. Hashtag knee tendonitis. I think that's sort of like, he's a very good example of that. And there are a lot of coaches out there that have a very similar sort of mentality to him.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, how many years you got left in juniors, Josh?
Next year's my last year.
Next year's your last
Yeah,
year.
push it,
next
man.
year.
Go as hard as you can.
400 squat coming at you. 100 kilo PB.
What do you think, in relative to staying injury free, do you think you'll be able to achieve?
Look, I think my form has changed a lot, and a lot of we've been working to like break down, strengthening certain areas so that everything else can get stronger. I think realistically, I'd be very happy with getting back to 300, because it's been a while since I've done that squat, just because of the knee tendonitis. But I think it would be realistic maybe to get 310. I reckon by the end of next year,
Bench
maybe even 315.
215.
I reckon 210, and I want to pull 330, 335. Maybe even 340 next year.
You got to stop joking about coming after my deadlift, then, big boy.
Hey,
Don't come at me with those weaknesses.
3 years older than me, Anthony. Leave me alone.
Me
Did for 10 years.
and
already.
Anthony, we made a bit of a bet yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually did make it.
What
We
was
made
the
a bit of a bet between you and Anthony.
What was the bet?
I think that you will eventually deadlift more than Anthony.
I definitely think I will too, because I don't have short arms.
Ooh,
I wish I was
called him
delusional
out.
as well. 'Cause in this world you both live in, there must be fairies and dragons. 'Cause that's the only way you're getting to me, Josh.
Now, I did say that you have years to do this.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a quick fix.
I said
It
two.
so Anthony was trying to put it in his favour, but I think was the next 2 to 5 years, I think he'll out deadlift Anthony.
It's not going to happen. So we made the bet at the end of 5 years,
What's
Who's
your
gonna
rep
have the
PB on
biggest
300?
deadlift in comp.
Yeah, so 5 years' time, whatever the biggest deadlifters in
My-
comp wins.
My biggest
Your, your rep PB on 300.
probably like 50.
All perfect form.
Yeah, I don't think you guys are giving me enough credit here. I'm a little bit insulted. And also, even if he does, I just want to remind you that total is king. So you can outbench me, you can out deadlift me, but
And
don't be-
I did point out though that I think you'd out total him. So I did say that.
I
But
also-
I just said Josh.
I also
would
feel a
out
bit
deadlift.
attacked getting compared to people that are 20 kilos heavier than me, but that's okay.
Be
There's
humble.
no weight
Be
classes in
humble,
the
brother. Be
jungle.
humble. yeah. Going back to your
No weight
saying.
classes in the jungle. I'm going to
Oh.
bulk to 180. My deadlift will
I'm
going
gonna bulk to 180.
Yeah.
Nah, it'll be good.
I'll get there
It's a,
first.
a friendly little
It's-
wager. I want to start doing your programming for free, Josh.
Really?
Yeah. Just throw you on the
Max
bus.
out every day.
You'd be like, yeah, just 10 sets of 10 on deadlifts, like 90%.
Good luck.
He does it? You're like, no way.
No, I'm actually interested to see. Like, once I get this grip sorted, I think my deadlift will jump from like 335 comp PB to like 500.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
And I'm excited to see both your deadlifts like shoot up, and hopefully this even is like a motivator or a driver to get both yours deadlift up and yours as well.
Definitely a
So
driver for Josh. I don't really need to worry.
you got all the
I'm
ego, you got all the ego you need.
I'm joking. I'm joking. You know this.
But going back to your, what you want to achieve, Josh, I think even if you hit 300, but you make it look good, you make it look comfortable, like a Nathan Tanner
Thing, a
squat.
form PB is a PB.
Yeah.
If you move a weight better, faster, stronger than you did last time, then you take that. And that's the other thing people need to realize is it's not just about numbers on the bar; it's about how you move it, right? So like with my squat, I was happy with that 322 because it looked better than anything above 310 has ever looked. So like Tyler's saying is right. If you go back and do 300, it's nice and clean. You're not snapped up straight afterwards. Then
Yeah.
that's a massive improvement and a big
That-
base to build off.
That's something I was really surprised about. I know I did it with a noodle bar and straps, but when I pulled the other day when I did 300 for a triple, I was actually surprised how I pulled up the next day. I was obviously I was a little bit fried because it's heavy weight, but that's something I've noticed with training smarter is that you don't feel like cooked after doing those heavy singles or
It's good,
I'm
man, because you're going
programmed
to need
triples.
those deadlift bar and straps to out deadlift me one day.
You made those deadlifts look good though. I think that on a power bar you'd be able to get similar to what you actually got because you don't get much out of a whippy bar because of the way you deadlift.
Yeah.
Where you're not that explosive from the bottom. It's just like
Oh, just
control
tension
the
it.
weight, tension. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think you're going to total next
When?
year?
Next year?
Yeah.
End of next year, like, I reckon I could get a comfortable, like, 820.
Yep.
820, 830. So aim around there. I just want to get back into the 800s, though, because I'm still sort of on the road to recovery type thing.
Yeah. I think that would be
100%,
good.
man.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you for coming on, Josh.
Thank you for having me.
Massive thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone for listening. You'll have us again next week. So, again, I feel like we said this in a few. Today was a bit short notice. But, we like to think that we're improving on our setup and everything. Any feedback, give it to us on Instagram or Facebook.
More beer.
You can now find us on Spotify, which is a really good improvement, and we'll have iTunes soon. So, again, Podbean, which I think goes to other apps, other podcast apps, Spotify, and YouTube. You can find us on all three of those, and soon to be iTunes. We're just sorting out some issues with them.
Still working on that one.
Yeah, I've been on the hold for like a month.
Yeah, we'd love to get some feedback from juniors as well, and if they took anything from this, and whether they want to know anything else from Josh or Anthony or myself.
I want to get a world record on vomit everywhere.
All right, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much.